Okay, so let's start things off by going to Token Metrics. So so on the last live stream, we mentioned we were very bullish on Bitcoin all the way up until the 3rd of November. And in a way, it's basically everything that's happening right now has been textbook. Bitcoin has done very well. If we pull up Bitcoin here, going to the AI price predictions. So yeah, so basically, if you're in Bitcoin and you're planning to trade it by Wednesday of this coming week, probably good time to take profits if you're up big on Bitcoin, or maybe even go to the sidelines. Now, this is just purely as a short-term trade because the belief is that post-election, anything could happen. And that lack of clarity is not something to risk your capital on, right? So if you're trading Bitcoin, we think the models have been pretty much textbook, right? So we would still do it. Actually, if anything, would likely take profits probably a day or two earlier. So probably today or tomorrow, just to be sure, right? But for anybody out there who's made money on Bitcoin, that's good. Now, one interesting perspective is I think the fundamentals of crypto are totally changing, right? It seems like almost every single week we're getting all these big events happening. And today, basically, Christine Lagarde, not sure if that's how it's pronounced, but basically the EU is now also going to prepare to issue a digital euro, right? So here, let me play this. Let me make sure sound is on.
We are still in the review and consideration stage, but we've just launched a public consultation so that consumers and Europeans can actually express their preference and tell us whether they would be happy to use a digital euro just in the way they use a euro coin or a euro banknote, knowing that it is central bank money that is available and that they can rely upon.
Yeah, so I think that is very huge for the space because the EU, the Federal Reserve Bank, they'll become the biggest marketing arms for Bitcoin and for crypto. Because once people use these centralized cryptocurrencies, essentially, I mean, it's just natural and organic for them to want to see what else is out there. And with all these governments spending money towards educating the masses, I mean, this is huge for crypto, right? So very bullish on crypto, even more bullish on Ethereum as well, right? So, I mean, basically all the years we've been waiting for crypto to pump is finally here. And then if we go to our quant grade, so apologies, there has been a delay in launching the quant grade, but the quant grade is taking a very interesting take on this. So Ohe might have mentioned he's very bullish on Hex. We had Richard on the call last week, and the quant grade, which is the new grading system we plan to launch, hopefully by November. I would say probably in the next week or two. But right now, the top 10 coins he likes, based on taking 54 quantitative data points. For example, if we go, let me show you how the quant grade works. So let's take Ethereum, for example. So these are data points that quants use. Just go here to performance metrics. So we're taking all these different data points, such as the return, Sharpe ratio, max drawdown, all these data points, put it into an AI, and we have it automatically go through and find what coins are good investments in the next month or so, right? So think of it as a way to find hidden gems very quickly, as kind of like a coin scanner using AI, right? So the top coin it has right now is Hex, followed by DAI, Bitcoin, Stasis, which is actually a cryptocurrency pegged to the euro that I had no idea about. But basically, it's taking most of the portfolio in stablecoins and some exposure to Bitcoin and Ethereum, and basically Hex, Chainlink, Millen Protocol, Elrond, Decred, Litecoin, Helium, and Maker, right? So I find this to be very interesting that, I mean, it has Hex as the #1 trade for the next few weeks to a month, right? And I think this is one of the reasons why, because yes, there's lots of controversy around Hex, right? And for the record, I think fundamentals for Hex are horrible. I think it's a bad project. But however, if you're trading and the TA, right? If Ohe Madi says the TA is bullish, if our quant AI says this is the best bullish trade, because if we go here to Hex, I was just taking a look at their chart. Now I see why there's so much mania on Twitter around Hex, right? It's basically been pumping. It went from 0.0007 to 0.014, and the trading volume liquidity is mainly on Uniswap, over 7 million, right? So it's definitely pretty liquid.
He's done a good job of kind of flushing out. I remember when there was like no liquidity on this coin.
Yeah,
He's done a pretty good job of getting all these guys on board. But just kind of ask yourself, how many people do you know that use EOS?
nobody.
Ask yourself that, ask yourself that question, and then tell me where value comes in when it comes to crypto. It's a highly speculative space, and there's a fine line between evangelizing a project and making money. And I think that's what I love about the young 2020, I call them the degen crowd, right? Is that the 2017 crowd was kind of like, and in their own right, accurate on this, that a lot of the projects that they were buying into in 2017 were kind of like, oh, we're selling you the world. We can change the world. We can do all these things. And everyone was like, oh yeah, I'll put my money into that, and these like massive overvaluations. And then everyone got wrecked. And then they came back and was like, well, we want to sue you because you didn't change the world, right? Or we want our money back, and there was someone to hold accountable. In the 2020 market, everyone who's young is like, yeah, we're just putting money into whatever shakes its leg at us. And we know that they're not here to change the world. We know that most of them are vaporware. But there will be some big winners, so we don't care, right? And it's almost like I don't want to go as far to say that people are taking financial responsibility, because God forbid, but it is a big paradigm shift between 2017 and now, which I think is really, really driving that understanding.
Yeah. I mean, I agree as well, and I think that's what happens when people are in the space for some time, right? Because the people who are calling Hex a scam, right, whether you think it is or not, are not people who are professional traders or investors, right? So I think, if anything, listen to the people who are actually making money, right? Because that's how you make money. Because here, let me pull up even our price prediction on Hex, because I know people will be asking about this, right? So this is what the AI is saying. So pretty much it thinks Hex could peak up until 0.017, right? So 1.7 cents is pretty much the peak. So if you're trading this, I think anywhere around here is probably a good time to take profit, right? And for the record, once again, fundamentals on Hex as a project, I don't think it's a good project. But if you got free Hex through the basically airdrop, or if you're trading it, I mean, don't fall in love with it. Understand that, hey, who knows? Maybe in a year it ends up going to zero, right? But while you can make money as a trader, right? Make money, right? Bill, any comments to add to any of that?
Sure. So if you look at Maddie's portfolio, right, it brings forth an idea that's almost crazy, which is, what happens if we don't know who the president of the United States is for 2 months? And, you've got man versus government versus virus over in Europe. What happens? Who would possibly be expecting an alt season to kick off during that 2-month time period? Because we had one in July and August. And then, if you look at his portfolio, he's essentially got 2% added to a lot of the coins that, they had their moments where they really got everyone's attention for a reason, right? Now, it may not be a change the world reason, as he said, but I looked at the portfolio and I'm like, wow, that looks and smells like alt season. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the Fed? Like, here's how it happens, right? So, we went through the crypto analysis. Now here's a macro idea. Whoever comes in, U.S. credibility is going to go down, most likely, right? It's a choice between a constitutional crisis and a financial crisis, right? If you tax wealth and have the wealth leave America, that's going to leave unfunded deficits. Without giving you an economics lecture, that could hurt the bond market or the dollar or both. Now, if I know that, if you know that, if our viewing audience knows that, so does the Fed, right? And you may turn off your TV to go to bed on election night, and Powell is going to hit, the print button, right?
That was easy.
and he's just going to hit it, right? He is going to put, they're going to put 500 billion in, I think, no matter what. There's gonna be like, oh, I mean, we did 2.6 in March. We can do 500 on election night. So if that happens, yeah, Bitcoin is going to go up. Ethereum is going to go up a lot, right? But what about these destroyed altcoins? I mean, here, let me see if I can bring up. Okay, so this is like the DeFi futures contract. Okay, here where my mouse is, it goes through this like 76% retracement line, just wrecking everybody, including me. And it's like, everyone's like, Bill, where's support? I'm like, oh, right here on this fib line. Oh, okay, great. Let's just, take it down, take out the stops, take everyone out, right? And I drew some things on here like this downward sloping wedge, right? We were on TV last time talking about the same formation in Kusama. And Kusama broke out. I don't see why it can't happen in DeFi. DeFi went from the hottest thing ever to dead in 30 days. Life is in the gray, not in the black and white. So reality is somewhere in between, and this seems too low. Now, back to the Fed. This is the US 30-year bond yield, okay? Also known as the bond vigilantes and a potential wrecking machine if someone says, we don't like the United States' credibility anymore. Now, what long bonds do is they find these diagonal resistance points, and then they go above them. They scare people. Those are the little rectangles, right? We're doing another scare right now because everyone's like, oh my God, either one of these guys scare me. The macro hedge fund talk is about that whole idea of capital being driven away by the United States by a kind of eat the rich mentality. That hurts bonds. Okay. But again, if I know that, and we all know that, the Fed knows that. So if the Fed's going to allow a long bond scare, okay, well, then we're going to have a really interesting show next week, let me tell you. But it'd be hysterical if the safe haven from what happens next week is destroyed small altcoins led by Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash. And I know everyone hates it, but, sort of interested in Litecoin, but, small alts and your dad's crypto leading.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like Kusama better than Litecoin because I think Polkadot's going to be big in this movement. And they're essentially the same thing as we discussed on the last call. But to the larger point, Europe is in a complete lockdown at the moment. They're literally rioting in the streets in France and Italy and Poland and Slovenia. We joked about it before coming on the show that in the UK, they're going to be going door to door during Christmas time to make sure that you're following appropriate social distancing rules, that you don't have more than X amount of households sitting at the dinner table. And I made the joke that if that happened in the United States, they'd shoot you at the door. What's really scary is, and this is my macro prediction, and I know this is a little out there, but I think regardless of what happens, there's going to be turbulence and turmoil. Either side is going to sue the other one. It's an unprecedented election with mail-in ballots, with people not being able to go to the polls, all these different lawsuits, instability in the court, new Republican appointed judge in the court as well. That's gonna be a big decision decider in any sort of legal case that gets accelerated. Think Gore v. Bush 2000, right? I'm sure there's going to be something in Pennsylvania. I think I saw that there's like 7 states that are less than 90% in terms of mail efficiency. The U.S. Postal Service now being told to ramp up their picking up of ballots, and there's going to be a lot of mail-in ballots or ballots that were dropped off these boxes that aren't going to be included because they have to be there day of. They could have been mailed 3 weeks ago. So it's an entire shit show. And my father's in the wholesale seafood industry, and he goes to Philadelphia to deliver to restaurants and pick up supply or whatever. There was another African American gunned down in the street by police officers a few days ago. So tensions are very high in the cities, and in Philadelphia specifically, the National Guard on every corner. Right, he's over there on a Saturday, picking up fish and delivering to people, and he needs to get protected by the National Guard because literally mobs of people are hitting the street and either protesting for civil rights or protesting for equality or protesting for even financial instability. They're not passing the stimulus bill, and I think that if Trump wins, I think Democrats clear the Senate and clear the House of Representatives. It's going to be a blue wave, but President Trump is going to try and hang on. So what happens in a post-election during all this chaos when people are trying to get much needed stimulus money? We look at it from the side of the perspective where it's saying, well, Fed's going to print a bunch of money, big stimulus bills, going to hit the market, devalue the dollar, et cetera, how bad that is in terms of public image. But we don't look at it from the perspective of, I think at the end of the year, all these, the moratorium on rent evictions kicks into place. All these people start losing some of their protections. We still haven't passed a continuation of the CARES Act. You have the stimulus that still hasn't passed. They still can't agree on a number when in reality, they're all just trying to put their own kickbacks in that bill. Right. So what happens in a scenario where blue wave happens, Trump wins, there's still no agreement of moving forward with a stimulus bill. What happens if Trump loses and it goes blue? Then you have agreement on a stimulus bill, but Trump's like, okay, I'm not dealing with that. Tries to get the presidency another way or whatever. And then you don't see a stimulus bill until after January 15th, or maybe even late January, early February. And meanwhile, while the whole rest of the world's shutting down, we're letting people catch COVID left and right, like it's a venereal disease on steroids at a party, right? And no one's doing anything about it. We're not shutting down. Our cases are going up. Now, you can make the case that things are better now with old folks' homes, and less people are dying, and we have better ways to treat it with therapeutics, and all of those are true. And do we need to shut down because of that? But people mistake those metrics, right? Because the virus can mutate at any point. It can become something that's more deadly than this. It could become some sort of like Ebola or whatever they thought it was going to become, like the dark plague, right? So the thing is that you don't want people catching it. You like, if you went through a thing where you're trying to be like Northern Europe and have everyone become herd immune, it's almost impossible, right? So everyone's waiting for a vaccine in like 2021 or like sometime in the summer to late 2021. I think, I'm a best man at a wedding in late 2021. I'm optimistic that I'll be at that wedding because I think that things will be better by then. But we have to get from here to then, and then you're going to have to see the economy take a few years to even recycle itself. But what I'm seeing is a direct break off in terms of the correlation from the S&P. I have a massive short on the S&P right now. It was pretty apparent in terms of the technicals, and in terms of crypto, everything's bullish. So they're clearly moving in opposite directions, and the market, as you said, tends to surprise people when they least expect it.
All right, so let's take some questions from the audience.